G'day and welcome back to Buildsum. And in this video, I'm going to go over the 10 building classifications that are covered off in the NCC, the National Construction Code here in Australia. So here's an overview of all the different classifications, and we'll go through and have a look at them individually. So the first classification, we'll start at class 1, and it's broken up into two areas, class 1A and class 1B. And in class 1A, there's two different building types, if you like. So class 1A1 is your single detached dwelling, whether it's single story or two story. So standalone, one owner, one occupier, detached dwelling. So that's 1A1, class 1A1. You then have 1A2, which is similar, but it's a attached dwelling. So in this case, we've got a duplex separated by a firewall. So anything that's attached, that's 1A2. And that can also include your multi-story or two-story buildings. And it can also be a grow of townhouses as well, as long as each dwelling is one family residing in there, and they're separated by firewalls, then they're classified as 1A2. Now 1AB, class 1B is still the same types of buildings or dwellings. It's just the way that it's used that differs. So if these dwellings are being used as a boarding house, a guest house, or a hostel, and they're less than 300 square meters or less than 12 people staying in that building, then they're classified as class 1B. All right, so that's class 1 covered off on. We then go to class 2. Now, class 2 is basically, we can describe it as apartment buildings. So this is where you have people living above and living below each other, and you need fire separation not only between the units on the same level, but you need fire separation for the unit above and the unit below. The other place that this could take place, if you had a single story building that was on top of a common or shared car park or a shared basement, that would also be classified as a class 2 building. So class 2 buildings, basically apartments, and the big identifier is that you have people living above or below each other. We then go into class 3. So class 3 buildings, again, it's similar to what we had in class 1B, except it's more than 300 meters and there's more than 12 people living in this building. So lots of smaller individual residences, unrelated people living in these for a short amount of time. Basically, a boarding house, a guest house, a hostel, or a backpackers. Could also be a workers' quarters, or in some cases, it could be care type accommodation for elderly or disabled if they don't happen to fall into another category, which we'll discuss later. All right, so class 3, lots of unrelated people living in the building for a short amount of time will give you a class 3 building. Then go into class 4. So class 4 is a bit of a unusual one. It's a small residential part of a larger building, a class 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 building. Okay, so the easiest way to describe it is like a caretaker's residence, someone that's there 24/7, they live there and they take care of the rest of the building. The part where they live and sleep is classified as class 4. And you can only have a class 4 building or class 4 classification in a class 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 building, and we'll look at those shortly. So that's class 4, a caretaker's type residence. So then on to class 5. Class 5 is basically an office building. So think about lawyers, accountants, general medical practitioners, and government officers and architects. that's the type of building that would be a class 5. So basically office space. Okay, then we go on to class 6. So class 6 is retail shops. All right, typically restaurants, cafes, hairdressers, a funeral parlor, a shopping centre. They'll all come in under class 6. So retail type shops are all class 6. Then we go into class 7. Now class 7 is broken up into 2 parts, 7A and 7B. First part, 7A, is basically car parks. So that's 7A. And then 7B are typically storage type buildings. So warehouses, and even if they do a little bit of displays for produce, and they sort of do wholesale sales out of it, it all comes in out as a 7B for storage. All right, so 7A and 7B, and then we go into class 8. So class 8 is a laboratory or a factory. So this is where they're actually producing something. Could be handicrafts, trade, sale, or gain. It may include assembly, alterating, repairing, finishing, or packing, or cleaning of goods or produce. Okay, so there's actually work or production happening in a class 8 building. We then go into class 9. So class 9 is classified as healthcare. So think of a hospital, and the reason it has its own classification is that in a healthcare building and a hospital, you sometimes have people that are incapacitated, whether they've been knocked out for surgery, or they're just in coma or whatever. They just can't physically move in an emergency under their own steam. So even if you had like a day surgery where they actually put people to sleep for certain procedures, it could be classified as a 9A building. All right, so just don't think hospital. There are other cases. So then we have 9B, which are what they call assembly buildings. So don't think putting things together. It's where people assemble. All right, so town halls, assembly halls at a school, sporting stadiums, public transport, nightclubs. Wherever you're going to get a lot of people in the same space, they're a class 9 building, and they're called an assembly building, class 9B. Class 9C is an aged care building. So it's similar to a healthcare building, but this is for aged care. So these people have different levels of mobility. Some may be bedbound. Basically, the people in a 9C building are going to need help to evacuate an emergency. So the fire regulations are a lot larger, or a lot more stringent in a 9C building. And that's all our actual accommodation buildings covered. The last building that we need to look at is, or the last classification to look at, is what they call class 10, obviously. So class 10 buildings are non-habitable buildings. So class 10A are carports, garages, sheds, that sort of thing. Just a building that you're not going to actually sleep in. Class 10B are things like antennas, fences, retaining walls, swimming pools, that sort of thing fall into class 10B. And the last one, class 10C, is a detached or separated bushfire shelter for the use of the homeowner. Okay, so bushfire shelter falls into 10C. So they're all our building classes. So obviously, in some cases, you may have a building that has multiple classes. Now you could have a car park underneath your shops or underneath your office space. So there is the chance that the building you're constructing is going to have multiple classifications. The general rule is that if the area you're looking at is greater than 10% of the total floor area, then it's going to get its own classification. So let's say you had a storage building and you had a little office in the front. If that office was less than 10% of the floor area, the whole building would be built as a 7B classification. However, if that little office space was larger than 10% of your floor area, then the main building will be built as a 7B building and the office space will be built as a Class 5 building. Okay, so there's a little bit of an overview on all the building classifications that are covered off in the National Construction Code. Hope that helps.
G'day again, I'm back. Just to let you know, if you like this video, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel or follow me on Facebook so you don't miss out on more great videos.